All right, good. So, well, it's a few of us here. How's everybody doing with the singing? Anything that's coming up in your singing that I can help you with? Everybody's so quiet.
Well, I'm fighting with a song that I'm doing with my band. It's not a difficult song really, but there's lots of jumps. So it's going really like down, up, down, up, down, up, and that's basically not being too heavy down, so you make it up without breaking and all that. And the text is really not friendly. It's lots of like stuff that you can't get your mouth around.
All right.
Lots of ease and yeah. And
how do you handle consonants then? Like, do you feel like it's the consonants that are kind of tripping you up a little bit?
yeah, I think it's the R's and the L's that sort of go back then.
Okay, that makes sense.
They kind of bring me back in the throat, and then yeah, and then the sound is just not good anymore.
Yeah. What language are you singing in?
English.
Okay. Yeah. So have you done practicing with just the consonants, like la 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 la, and just kind of getting used to just barely tapping that and making sure that your tongue tip is where it's supposed to be? Like, it should be just slightly behind the upper front teeth, hitting that alveolar ridge.
Yeah, I did it on basically I did it on M's and V's. I was sort of like trying to do the fricatives, and that works fine. Just when I include the text again, then.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, because you mentioned the L's and R's, and those are actually two really commonly difficult consonants that cause a lot of difficulty commonly with singers. And the R is difficult because it's a retroflex sound, so your tongue is pulled back, and depending on how you form it, you can just kind of pull the tongue back. And some people actually flip the tip up a little bit too as they pull back, and it makes it more pronounced. So learning to be able to just kind of just barely retract that tongue, even more so than in speech. In speech, we can pull it back more and it's not going to disrupt anything significantly. But in singing, we have to kind of soften that R a little bit. Plus, the R has that really low third formant, so it's kind of ugly in singing. So we want to kind of minimize its effects on the voice and on the vowel in particular. We have a lot of R's in English, a lot of R-controlled syllables, doctor, those kinds of syllables. So most of the time we just kind of introduce the R very subtly or sort of at the end of the syllable if possible. And the L's are also problematic for some singers because they tend to tighten up too much with their tongue roots. And they tend to use too much effort in bringing that tongue up. And sometimes they retract the tongue too much. So it kind of sits behind the gum ridge, the alveolar ridge up top, instead of just kind of sitting on top of it, just slightly behind the teeth. So learning to be able to just practice kind of flipping back and forth between your L's and your vowels, and practicing that, like drilling that when you're not singing, can be really helpful. Mm-hmm. The same with the R's, is learning to be able to kind of go rah, 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 or whatever vowel you're doing, and learning to be able to kind of minimize that R as much as possible. That can really help. And the leaps are another story altogether. So that's are like you're talking about, like big intervallic leaps, right? Where are you jumping from one register to another on top of that?
Yeah, the song goes down to an F, which is sort of like, well, I can go a bit lower, but not much.
Okay.
And the highest note is the C, so above middle C.
Okay.
But it's more than, it's 1.5 octaves, and basically you're doing mostly almost octave jumps.
Okay. Have you practiced slowing it down, just sort of doing it a cappella, not with the band, but gliding through that transition, just to be able to teach your instrument how to adjust? So if you're doing like the octave, you're like, and whatever, I don't know what the lyrics are, but you take the lyrics and you do the same thing, as you add a couple extra beats. So you're not going to be able to do this when you're practicing with the band, but just kind of adding the extra couple beats and then giving yourself time to make the adjustment. And then what you do is you gradually decrease that extra space and time that you're giving it, and then the instrument just kind of memorizes exactly how it's like the coordination it's supposed to aim for on that next note. So you can try that. I do that with my own singing sometimes, where it's like, oh, I don't like how that note is sitting, like I'm changing registers when I don't want to change registers there. And I just do a couple slides up and down, and then I kind of shorten those slides, the glides, and then my instrument starts to remember how it's supposed to coordinate for that pitch.
Mm-hmm.
You could try that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to play around a bit with it. It's. I mean, it's not like it doesn't work at all, but it's not as I want it. It's just not consistent and doesn't sound connected, and yeah. So, and as I said, if it's not on text, it works fine. But the text is really like breeze and breeze, and it's always. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the text can be really hard. Sometimes, like I said, just kind of isolating your consonants and figuring out which ones are problematic. It's not all of them for most of us, but the L's and the R's are really common. And also the other thing, I actually worked with a number of students this summer who struggle with unvoiced consonants, and they end up kind of, because they're starting to make the sound, and there's no actual, I mean, they're making the consonant, but there's no sound yet. When they get to the vowel, they kind of throttle the tone on the vowel, and they get this like this, they're choking off the airflow in an effort not to kind of make that plosive or fricative or whatever it might be that's unvoiced too explosive or too airy. And that's also a common thing too, is that when we get those unvoiced consonants, we tend to kind of do weird things we choke off the tone after them. So those are things to watch out for when you're dealing with text, and like speaking through it sometimes, and just paying attention to how your voice handles it in speech, assuming that you don't have difficulties in speech, learning to sort of be able to transfer the same speech patterns into your singing. Because a lot of us really kind of distinguish between singing and speaking, and then we sort of abandon all of our speech principles in an effort to sound like we're singing, and then we end up doing weird things. I do weird things with some of my R's. I do weird things with my R's, and I have to really watch. I add extra syllables where there should be none, and I have to I catch myself doing that all the time, and I have to correct it, and then I have to drill that into that phrase so that I develop a new behavior through there. But we all have our own little quirks, and we just have to kind of, I think, working them outside of the thing of a rehearsal or a performance is the time to do it. When you're just, there's no pressure and nobody's waiting on you to figure it out, that's the time to do it.
No, I actually try not to sing as I speak, because when I speak, it's more of a British tone, and that kind of brings you more back. So I try to actually keep that more neutral when singing, because otherwise, boom, you can't just, you don't get your, like, it doesn't work. So
yeah, there are things we all have to work out, definitely, in our singing. Yeah. Anybody else have anything that they're working on or trying to figure out, or questions?
Karen, I'll jump in. Sorry, I just realized I'm sitting right next to wind chime, so I hope that doesn't drive everybody crazy when I'm talking here.
I don't hear them right now, so
They died down for a second. I know you've mentioned before that you're pretty familiar with the musical theater world. I was recently cast as Riff Raff in the Rocky Horror Show, which is just about everything Riff Raff sings is like E4 and above, up to like B4, and which is not, particularly natural for my voice. And what I've been struggling with in particular from about E4 and above is finding that balance in compression. I tend to either go one of two ways. Either I try to stay really relaxed in the throat, and I'm just blasting a ton of air and volume, or I swing it really hard in the other direction, where I just really clamp down and it's really pressed and shouty. And I'm having, especially at those pitches, I'm trying to figure out how to find that balance, that sort of middle, what I can work on to find that healthy middle ground between those two extremes.
How did you do with that compression exercise?
So Yeah, that was you know, like I said, I came late to the group, so that was right around the time that I jumped in was when that exercise came out. And I felt like, I mean, when I'm getting up around that range, I did feel like I was able to sort of switch to a headier, you know, M2 kind of place and maintain compression. But it did feel like a lot of work. It felt like I was doing a lot of work in my throat, which is always, you know, I'm never quite sure how much is a healthy amount. Um,
Like a lot of work, like sore, a lot of work, or like.
I would say more like tired, like feeling like tired muscles, I guess. Like I feel like for me, my big issue is I feel like, you know, those sort of swallowing muscles around here tend to get fatigued, where I don't feel a ton of pain, but I feel sort of like those muscles are a little tired. And that's a challenge that I run into a lot.
Okay, yeah, that sounds to me like you're probably working harder than you need to.
Right.
I mean, your speech sounds okay. Do you ever get fatigued within speech if you're talking for a long time?
Yeah, I would say so. I probably tend to talk a little heavier than I need to.
Yeah, because like right now, like your tongue retracts a tiny, tiny bit.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a little bit in your speech, but I mean, it for the most part, it doesn't sound like it's like muscle tension dysphonia that you're dealing with. So,
Okay.
you're probably just you're probably just overworking up there. Have you tried going through phrases and just talking through them on pitch? Is it hard?
Yeah, I come back to that quite a bit, to kind of try to remind myself of that feeling. Yeah.
And
Have
does
you?
that improve the airflow and it reduces the constriction or the excess squeeze?
Yeah, it can. I mean, lately I've also been trying to just concentrate more on just that sort of feeling of thinning out, of sort of speaking in a lighter voice, where I still feel that compression and that squeeze. You know, it's not airy, but it's lighter, and that seems to relieve the pressure a little bit. You know, I'm just kind of trying to figure out if that's the right direction, basically, that I should be going.
Yeah, in musical theater, I mean, more so with women than with men, but in musical theater, it's actually more MC dominant than what we think sometimes. If you talk to anybody who teaches like professional Broadway singers,
Mm.
what's his name? Richard Lissmore has a really great set of like master classes on his website. I don't know if you've heard of Richard Lissmore, but he's worked with a number of singers.
Okay. Yeah,
He worked with oh shoot, what's his name? Matt. He sang the lead in Finding Neverland. I'm trying to think. He was on Glee. What's his name?
Oh, Matthew Morrison.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So he worked with him
Okay.
preparing for the role and such. And he's really amazing as a teacher. But yeah, he really has singers kind of embracing the idea of more of a head mix in musical theater and not always heavy, except when you're belting. But you're not always belting, right? When you're
Right.
belting, it needs to be more M1. Or at least highly compressed as you get above a certain point. If you just need to kind of do more of the like LCA compression, like the posterior compression instead of
Right.
the weight, like the medial PA compression. That was something I had to embrace too, because I was like, oh, I've got to be really heavy and I've got to always be in this like M1. And I was like, when I really started reverse engineering the sounds that I was hearing in, musical theater singers, females in particular, I was just like, I realized that it wasn't all as heavy as I had imagined it was supposed to be.
Right.
So I think that's one thing, is kind of embracing that. But going back to speech is the biggest thing, because in musical theater, so much of the storyline and the characterization is conveyed through song. And there has to be this absolute clarity. And
Right.
that's why we hear a lot of twang. That's why we hear certain qualities in the voice. It's to help make the voice very, very clear and the diction very clear, so that the audience can follow the storyline. You can get away with a lot more in pop and rock because they can figure it out and they can listen to it again and again, and it's not
Right.
that critical. It's not as critical, I think, that diction is pristine. We have another. Right. Yeah. So I think if you just go back to speaking it and getting to the place where speaking on that pitch feels very similar to speaking down lower,
Okay.
and then gradually turning it in from speaking to singing. And I was just doing this yesterday in my own singing, actually, because the same thing. I was like, where is that balance? I can't find it. I'm either too heavy or too light. I don't want to be there. I want to be in a real kind of mix with good compression, good closure, good clarity in my diction, but I don't want it to be like really light or really heavy. So I was doing exactly that. I was just like, okay, if I speak this, and it takes work because it is a little more work to speak at those higher pitches, but I spoke through it, and then I just kind of gradually made it a little bit more sing-songy without losing that coordination. But I have to do that in my own singing all the time because like I'm naturally an M2 singer above my E4. Like that's just where I intuitively want to go. That's where I've always gone, and having to like bring more weight and bring more compression up there is really not my default at all. And so I've had to learn to kind of do these little things that help me find the balance, because otherwise I will, like when I first started trying to do that, I was like way over compressed, way pressed. Like I couldn't get enough airflow. I felt like I was stacking breath pressure. It was
like overcorrecting.
Yeah, and I was like I wasn't moving enough air past the vocal fold, and then trying to find that balance, you know, it's challenging.
Yeah,
Brian.
That's funny. That's right where I'm at, coming from the other direction. I tend to be, you know, not surprisingly as a man, I tend to be more heavy and chesty, and so trying to find that thinner place up higher is what I'm kind of struggling with. So meeting in the middle.
Well, some of those, like, you know, that exercise, right, where it's like you're the top note down the bottom note, sort of feeling the same in terms of effort level. That was really, really helpful for me in finding the balance, because otherwise I would go too heavy on certain notes when I was like, oh, I don't want to go into head voice. So doing stuff like that, the speak singing, the feeling just enough to get that compression, but no more.
Right.
That was helping.
Helped me as well, the eke a mouse type of thing, thinking about thinner compression up there, that helped me a little bit as well. So.
And one of the things that you can do is you can work in the opposite direction. Like you can go from like a lighter, if you don't have to do falsetto, then don't do it, but like more of a heady mix. And then just see what happens when you compress it just a little bit more, but don't take it all the way to the extreme of like squeeze, right? Just what happens if you go from, you know, like this lighter kind of, not necessarily lighter in dynamics like volume, but you know, just a lighter weighted coordination, and then just add a little bit of compression, see where that takes you.
Okay, yeah.
You'll probably find that the voice will kind of yodel and wobble a little bit at first, but then you'll kind of settle on a coordination that probably works better. Right. But usually when singers are like really heavy, really like they muscle their way up the scale, I tend to have them do like a reverse approach where they start lighter and then work their way back up to heavy, but never going all the way to the extreme again.
Right.
Or we do like top-down approaches where we go above the troublesome area and bring that quality down more so that they find more balance in the middle.
Right.
But yeah,
that's great. Sorry?
How's your falsetto? Like airy falsetto, like is that good?
It's gotten better over time. I've spent quite a bit of time trying to work on it because, you know, for a long time it was pretty thin, pretty breathy, you know, and I've been doing a lot to try to strengthen it, make it a little bit cleaner and clearer. I mean, it's still pretty weak compared to my chest voice in general.
I think they're two completely different coordinations, and I don't know if I'm 100% convinced that they really help each other balance out. A lot of teachers are convinced of that, and my first teacher, he had me bring my head voice down as low as I could, and then my chest voice up as high as I could, hoping that somewhere in the middle there would be more balance. And to be honest with you, I was with him for like 8.5 years, and I never really found that balance.
Interesting. Okay.
I found it in doing more like the twangy stuff, the that little the that kind of thing. Like that's how I found more strength and balance. And I was, you know, learning to be able to get into the call of the voice for me was big, because before that I couldn't go in chest voice above about an F4. Anything above that was like it's scratchy and felt really bad. But learning to be able to carry that up well into my 5th octave was really helpful for me. But with somebody like you've got to go kind of the opposite.
Right.
And I think it is good. You strengthen that falsetto. You learn to carry that lighter quality down. they're two separate coordinations, but I think it gets your instrument more flexible and more versatile, and that can't hurt. That can't hurt in helping you find that coordination. But ultimately, right. I think getting into the squeaky kind of level, that to me, I think is where most of our singing happens, especially in musical theater. And right. that's what you have to find, is that sort of in between coordination.
Right.
But yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. No, that's kind of, I've been sort of trying everything, so it's great to know, you know, kind of what things are best to focus on.
Yeah, and do lots of like twang work too, to get that tongue kind of a little like released and
yeah.
Inside, because I think that's another thing too. If you do tend to muscle your way up the scale, which it sounds like you do, you're probably using a lot of tongue root pressure to do that.
Yeah.
Which is really common through that bridge area, and then it makes you inflexible as you go higher.
Right.
Because now you've got not just vocal weight from like the chest voice muscles, but now you've got tongue root trying to help. Like I'm here, I'm helping.
Right. Yeah.
Helping. It's counterproductive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you could pick that up in my voice just now, because I've had other teachers tell me that they can tell that I have a bit of that kind of hold back in the throat quality with my tongue, so I'm always fighting with that as well.
You know, an exercise I like for that too is you're doing na.
Okay.
And
I've heard that one.
You have to have like a lot of flexibility. Like you cannot weigh that down. Your tongue root. It's na. Yeah, na. Like, and if your tongue root is tense, you're not going to be able to do it at that speed, especially. And you're gonna find that all the sounds just kind of blur into one.
Right.
You're not going to get a vowel. You're going to get so stuck on the consonants, the NG in particular, that your vowel is just going to kind of just almost be gone. So when you can learn to release the tongue, it's kind of even a good litmus test, right? If you can do so you just start off slower, na, a little bit slower, or you can even just do get rid of some of the extra syllables in there. But that's a good training tool too, because it keeps the frontedness, it keeps that, we'll say, pharyngeal ring with the NG, and then it trains the tongue to kind of release more, the tongue root in particular. You try that to train on that and go up through your scale, even if it goes into like an M2, that's fine too. Hey, Angela.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great, that sounds perfect actually. That sounds like a great exercise for me.
Well, let me know how you do with that too, and you're always welcome to like sing through the exercise, record yourself singing it, post it.
Great.
And if you don't want to post it in front of everybody, you can always message me privately and just send me the link there, or the video. I've had people send private videos that just didn't feel like sharing it with the group, which is fine.
Right.
Hey, Angela, you look really relaxed.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that.
I think it's nap time for Angela.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Sorry, Tim kept crashing on me.
No, that's all right.
It took me forever to get in.
Well, this will be available. I'm recording it, so I'll be able to post it in a little bit.
Oh, great.
So you can see what we've talked about. Yeah. Sandy, how are you doing?
Pretty good. I was working on exercises to expand my range a couple of weeks ago and ended up overdoing it and had to take a week and a half off from singing, but I have recovered now. Thank goodness.
How are you trying to expand your range? What are you doing?
Oh, well, I have some exercises that I do, and it's a progression where each time you go for a week doing the bass, where that's basically my tessitura area. And then each week it adds a note, along with exercises to help with relaxing the tension in the throat and tongue and all those fun things. Sorry, I'm a little stuffed up from allergies this morning.
Are you mastering the top note before you move on to the next half?
Yes. Yeah, you have to.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm I'm one of those I want it now people. So yeah, I was pushing the notes a little too much, and I could hear that I was getting air once I reached the F, and I still pushed it, and yeah, it it sounded horrible after I got my vocal cords to be pissed off at me.
So one of the things that I do with singers is we try to reduce the sound, because I think sometimes, right, you want these big and powerful high notes, and then we go for volume, and when we go for volume, we tend to overdo it, we tend to push. So one of the things I like to do is get everybody to kind of reduce the sound as much as possible while still connecting at the glottal level, so they're not airy. And just learning to be able to bring that down and then grow the sound from there, as opposed to going full blast immediately. Is like, no, just bring the sound down, like a clear, focused sound, but
Right.
not like really digging in and going for loudness. Because then if you do start to hear a little bit of air seeping, that's exactly what's happening. You're pushing
Yeah.
too much air, you're driving with the breath too hard. And it's probably how you're thinking about the pitch, and how you're thinking about that part of the range, right? You're like, well, everybody wants a big, powerful, full head voice range, for example, but sometimes we try to sort of put the cart ahead of the horse, and we're not quite there yet. So yeah, just
Yeah,
pay attention to that you're not like driving with the breath and just so determined to get those notes and grow that range that you're exactly having to take a week and a half off, and it's kind of like you're having to backtrack a little bit. It's not.
Yeah, and now I'm back to doing basic warm-ups every day, just to get the. I'm not pushing any notes. I'm staying well within my a narrower range. I'm basically just going from C to C, or from B to C, B4 to C5, and I'm just sticking there for a while until I feel like I'm back to warmed up. My sound is good, and I'm just not pushing it right now.
Good. And what do you do, like just light phonations up there as well, like just lip frills, tongue frills, that kind of thing? Do you do straw phonation at all?
Yeah, I have a whole routine that starts with humming before it even goes to anything else, which is a good warm up for me. And then I have the part where it moves into actual, like the vowels, and then adds short words like mum. We do mum a lot. But yeah, and then I'm also right now really working on pitch, which is it in being consistent. I have this great app on my phone. It's a note recognizer, and it shows you if you're singing the right thing or not. So I'm staying in a small range for that as well, because I want to master, a shorter range of that before I try and do anything else.
Does your mum feel really easy and effortless, or do you feel like you're tensing on your M's? M's are hard for a lot of people.
No, I don't really get tense with A. As long as I stay below an E and an F. No, the mum is really easy for me. There's no tension with that at all. When I was in the classical choir, we did mum. We did lots of mums. So it's kind of old hat for me.
So when you're trying to stay below that F in particular, are you feeling like does it feel uncomfortable, or does it just sound thin and weak? Like is it tense? Like is it tense?
If I get up to the F, it gets tense, and it sounds kind of almost like plucking too tight of a guitar string. You know what I mean? That kind of weedy, really stressed sound.
Okay.
And I'm trying to avoid that for a while.
You get kind of like a diplophonic sound on G, so like it sounds almost like two tones separately when you get to a G.
I couldn't hear you say that one more time.
So do you get like two simultaneous tones sometimes, like especially starting around the G, if you try to go up like that?
If I go up to, after I'd been doing the exercises where I was pushing for too long, yeah, it did almost sound like I had two things going on, two sounds going on. And it was just an ugly sound.
How about straw phonation above your EF area? Have you done that?
I haven't done with the straw. it's been great for breath support, using the straw and water that's been fantastic. That's like the easiest and greatest exercise ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a speech therapy exercise. It's designed to balance out those neuromechanical aspects of our production. Just when you're doing it in the water, make sure also that you're not like bending down into the water. So
Right, no.
Try to make sure you're watching your alignment, because as soon as you bend down, that changes the shape of the throat and it changes the height of the larynx. So you want to make sure that you're set up to be able to benefit from that exercise. So with the straw phonation, you've got that positive back pressure.
Right.
And that theoretically, you know, you've got the back pressure is gently pushing on the walls of the pharynx, right, to try to keep those pharyngeal constrictors from tensing and squeezing the throat. So the more you train on something like that, the more your throat starts to remember what it's supposed to do. And the more I think you start to trust that your voice knows what to do. That's the big thing, I think, for most of us up there. Once we get above that, you know, you're higher, right? We start not trusting our voices, and then we start doing all sorts of things to try to brace or to help. And that's where it becomes, I think, more problematic, because then we're not getting enough space in the throat up there. And especially for females, once we get above about, you know, EF, we need to change the shape. We need to, I'll say add space, but we need to, more like we need to make sure that we don't lose space up there.
Right. Right. And, you know, it's funny because for so long I thought I was singing in head voice, and it turns out I was singing mixed. I can do mixed up to CD, but then that's where my secondo passaggio comes in, and I haven't yet mastered actually hitting head voice. So that's another thing that kind of, so I'm straining past something I'm not doing right on the technique, and I need to work on that.
Okay.
And I will definitely start working, you know, doing the phonations with the straw, because that's like one of my favorite things to do is watching whether or not my pressure is consistent.
Good. Yeah, like I said, there's so many different benefits. It squares up the vocal folds, it keeps the throat open, it helps with resonance, it adds to the efficiency of the instrument. So it can help us build that upper range. The lip trills, tongue trills, those sounds, those are really good up there too, because they use only the thin edge function of the vocal folds. So you're not using a ton of weight. So they're really good for helping us access that higher range. I also like to do like just an ooh. Oohs and e's are good head voice vowels. Ooh in particular is good because the throat shaping is a little bit bigger than it, little wider than it is on an E. For a lot of singers, they can't quite get out of squeezing the E. So even just doing light kind of airy ooh, those kinds of sounds, and maybe going more for, I would say, like the wide old owl, ooh, 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 as opposed to the baby owl, ooh, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of sirening that, but thinking, ooh, like you're a wide old owl. Ooh is a really good head voice vowel.
Your sound is fading out a little bit. Sorry.
I think it's Zoom technology too. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, I've been on video things on this with other voice coaches that do, you know, the video conferencing here on Zoom, and we always have trouble with the sound too.
Huh. I think it doesn't help that I'm this close. I think in lessons my students are flying back a little bit, so I don't know. But I have tried using my studio mic in the past, and it was still doing weird things. So I think it might be Zoom technology, not the mic so much.
Yeah.
Sorry. It should be back now. And I wasn't even going loud. But it was usually high frequencies, or if I'm really loud, that it just kind of cuts out for a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just wise old owl, giving the space. When you get to, most of us, when we start getting to about the D, E, F area, for most of us around D is when we start kind of having to shift, or C sharp. Like for me, about C sharp is where I start kind of making the preparation for head voice. Because if I wait until my passaggio at E, it's a little too late. I have to make more radical adjustment. So I start adding more like into my throat space. So I've almost got like an under vowel. My throat, my pharynx is saying like good, but then my mouth is actually speaking the vowel that I'm intending. And that makes a big difference. And letting the jaw kind of release a little bit as we go higher, that's important. It changes it changes the throat, it changes the resonance, makes it easier. But that's my advice for head voice. Is just
Alrighty.
start out lighter. Don't aim for like full big sound right now. Like it's just that's how you drive the breath and push too much. Access it, and then you can work with it once you can access it comfortably.
Awesome. I will start adding some new exercises today.
Yay! So Sandy, is there anything that you wanted to ask about before we go today?
Yeah, hi. I'm new to this, so if everything looks weird, please don't be confused. My main register has always been the chest voice, and just the recent years, so in 2018, I started discovering mixed voice and all the other things. But my main question for today is how can I get rid of tension? I always have tension in this area, so it's always the neck and the shoulder area, and turned out that my dentist told me that I've been constantly clenching my teeth without even noticing it. And now I have a mouth guard at night. I wear that at night, and I get what's called like kind of like a jaw massage at a physiotherapist.
Okay.
That kind of helps a little bit, but I still need exercises to just get some ease in this area. So because it bugs me whenever I want to sing, it's annoying. And so my question is, can you recommend any exercises to get this tension of the jaw and the shoulder and the neck area?
So that's so you sound just like me. I carry a lot of jaw tension, not when I'm singing, just day to day. I clench my jaw. I don't grind, but I do clench, and I have, and my tongue will get tense, and I'll notice that it's like completely retracted in my tongue. I'm just sitting there on the couch or walking through a store, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my tongue is like crazy tight. I don't really have the troubles in singing per se, but it can carry over into singing. So you have to kind of deal with the day to day, I think, before you can really experience the relief in singing, because it's already there. You're entering into your practice sessions with tension that exists already. I can pretty much guarantee, given what you're talking about, where you're sore, is that you're holding tension probably because there's stress and stuff in your life. There's probably a lot of psychological, emotional stuff going on, like a lot of us, just stress of day-to-day stuff and anything else that we're dealing with. But you probably also, like most of us, have sort of a head forward posture. It may not even be like really dramatic like mine, but you probably are, when these muscles are chronically sore back there, it's because your head is slightly forward and they're having to work extra hard to hold your head up. And then so what happens is these muscles become chronically shortened, and that affects the height of the larynx. And then also what happens is all these muscles start trying to help. All the muscles under the chin, the jaw muscles, the tongue muscles, they all try to help brace the larynx and the throat for the sound. So you probably have to go and address the root causes of the tension before it's really going to like filter into your singing, because it's probably nothing purely technical. For most singers, it's not really technical. There's always some underlying thing. It could be poor use of the breath, but I find in the vast majority of the cases, it's actually just bad alignment. Part of it's because of our lifestyle. So one of the things that I do is, and I do this for myself as well, I need to do it more often. It's always amazing when I do it, is like that semi-supine position, the Alexander technique. And you can find instructions online. I also have an old video from like 3 years ago, I think, on body alignment. And then I have another video that does address like the tensions here in the neck, and it shows a bunch of stretches and exercises that we can do and massages to deal with this. So oftentimes what happens is we're not even aware, because these muscles are chronically shortened, we're not even aware that there's tension there. I don't register any tension there at all. It's all shoulders, back, all in that area, right? Yeah. Until I start actually touching and palpating and massaging and stretching. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea that I'm that sore and tense. And then it's like, but then I do this with my students when they're dealing with a lot of tension. We'll sit there for like 5-10 minutes, usually about like 5 minutes in the lesson, at the beginning of the lesson when they really struggle with this. And I'll do like, some like cross tissue massages where I'm going across the different muscles. I'm not going to take like a lot of time with this, but you'll find these exercises. If you look up tension under the chin, tension, suprahyoid muscles. If you look up in my SingWise, like the YouTube channel, you'll find that.
What would be the search word for the video? Is it tension? Is it body alignment?
Yes, so there is one on body alignment. So if you just put SingWise and then body alignment or posture, because I probably use those all for, like, I use a bunch of different keywords so people can find it using different keywords. But the other one is tension underneath the chin. And then I think you can probably look up, suprahyoid, and just put SingWise so that you'll come to the right one and it should be up there. But that was a video where I outlined a lot of those like stretches where we're stretching the sternocleidomastoid muscles, the scalene, going through there. And what you notice is all of a sudden now your neck sits higher. And like I noticed immediately when I start doing that with my students, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have more mobility, more flexibility. The jaw starts to release, the tongue starts to release, because now everything's in a better place. And now we're not dealing with, I just noticed how like tense I am right here through the collarbone, just doing that. But I don't even register it most of the time. I'm always aware of the back of the neck. The semi-supine position is really good if you can give yourself 10, even 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes is ideal, but if you can give yourself 5 or 10 minutes a day, lying on the ground. I mentioned that in that posture video, but I also show like the semi-supine where you put like soft books, like a paperback book or something, or like, like one of these guys or something, like underneath your head, just so your head's not like really, really pulled back, because that'll obstruct the airway. And you just lie there and you let your body.
It just needs to be straight. I shouldn't go too much back and I shouldn't go too much up front, but it just needs to be straight, and that's why I would need something harder underneath my head. Yeah,
just because you don't want to be quite all the way back to the level of, especially if you tend to have a little bit of an extra like kyphotic turn here, then your head's going to be like, and you're going to feel that in your airway. It's going to feel like obstructed, right? So if you get it so that there's a good alignment, you're going to feel like the ribs feel like they're really flexible. They can open up. You're going to feel like the air just flows really easily, and your body's going to feel like it kind of widens, like your back widens, and then you'll get like the spine will feel longer and taller. Like when I stand up from that, I'm like probably literally a ½ inch taller.
Okay.
Then, and it doesn't last all day, right? I have to go back and do that and reset kind of, just because I don't have the neural pathways in place to maintain that, because the rest of the day I'm like head forward and I'm like this on my laptop all day long, right? But that to me was really helpful. That helped with things like my tinnitus. I used to have this constant, it took me like 9 months to go to see a doctor about it, because I'm not a doctor person, but I had this constant like low hum inside my ear, and I was like terrified that I was losing my hearing, because it wasn't like the ringing tinnitus. I get a little bit of that in my right ear, but it was just like this low motor hum, like this constant like refrigerator hum, but really loud, deafening. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I had an MRI, they ruled out like tumors and blockages and things like that. And I was like, look, they even tested me for Lyme disease. Like there was all sorts of stuff. And I found out that it was all related to, the tension, like in these muscles that were pinching the brachial plexus, that bundle of nerves in there. And it's all related to that. And as soon as I started doing more semi-supine stuff and started like really being more mindful of my alignment, that started going away. The jaw tension started improving. And it was all like this whole host of things, like what my carpal tunnel was a little better, all sorts of stuff. Like, so it's amazing what finding the right body alignment can do for us.
Okay.
And that's where I always start. Even though it seems kind of boring and it seems like it's tedious, it's really critical. Because if our bodies don't know how to align themselves properly, then what's going to happen is we're going to try to align them when we're singing, and then we're going to do it with tension. And we're going to go from one bad alignment to another form of bad alignment. And that's what always happens. So I start with that, and then I do those exercises. But the next 7-day challenge that we're going to be doing, I start on the 19th, so in like a week and a half, and that's going to be on tension. That's what everybody was asking for. The majority of people were saying that they wanted to address that. Yeah, so we're going to get into this as a group, and every day I'm going to give you some sort of exercise. That will probably be the first one, the semi-supine exercise.
Good question. You've been using a word or an expression 2 times, and I didn't understand it because of it wasn't clear. It was like so something with S concerning tension. It was a name or a word. I couldn't fully understand it.
Like the semi-supine, or
yeah, what is that? Can you say it slowly, please?
Okay, so semi, like half, and then supine. Supine, like meaning lying down. So SUPINE. Yeah, and you can actually find there's if you put Alexander technique. Oh, sorry.
Okay, and the other word
technique, you'll actually see lots of instructions. You can Google it, and you can also go through the YouTube search engine, and there'll be lots of Alexander technique stuff. I love Alexander technique.
So Alexander technique and semi-supine.
Or constructive rest is another name for it. It's constructive rest because you're resting, but you're accomplishing something while you're resting. You're realigning your body. The nerves are learning to fire differently. They're learning to give different signals to your muscles again because they're not being obstructed all the time. You're regenerating the spinal discs because you're actually letting them kind of rest and relax instead of compress all day long. Stuff like that. So there's so much great stuff that happens, and I've personally noticed what happens, like the great things that happen when I'm actually consistently doing what I need to get back to. But yeah, so that, and then go through some of those stretches and exercises and see what happens. Like do that, spend 5 minutes before you sing doing the massages and stretches, stretching the sternocleidos. Sorry?
Even before warming up my voice. So you would say first kind of relaxing the body and then warming up the voice.
Yeah, because again, you're coming in with tension. So you're setting yourself, you're already set up for more tension and stress on your voice, right? So if you at least kind of, to some extent, get rid of the tensions of the day that have built up, then you're at least sort of starting with a clean slate. And then you could probably make better progress. You could probably find that it's easier to do the stuff technically as a singer if you're not dealing with all the same kinds of interferences just kind of stacking on top of each other. So you just kind of recalibrate, reset. And then I have students do that again in the middle of a lesson. If they notice that tension starts creeping in a little bit, like, okay, take a couple minutes, we'll do some straw work, or we'll do something. We'll do some Alexander technique, whispered ahs, where you're setting the throat up, you're opening, the larynx lowers, the jaw releases, and you're just doing like an ah shape in your throat, but you're going, and it's amazing how it resets everything, because now the throat's like, okay, oh, I know that position, I remember that now. Okay. And then learning to be able to sing through that. But we're going to go through probably the Alexander technique, 2 of those exercises there during our challenge. Yeah. All right, I have a lesson in a few minutes to get to, so any other questions or thoughts before we go? Well, and again, I'm around, so if you have anything that comes up after this, you can always post it somewhere in the group.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if it's still okay to post those other challenges, because I had exams, so I wasn't able to complete. I only did 2, and then I just had no time at all to do the final 5. So is it still okay to post them?
At any time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people join every week. I've had a few more people join, and the challenge has been over for weeks. So, and they're always welcome to post at any time. I'm hoping this group just kind of keeps growing, and we start to just really develop a great community here. And then, yeah, I'm just here to help in any way I can. And yeah, so. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. I will see you. Sandy has disappeared. All right, and I will see you soon. I'll see you around, and then, like I said, I'm going on vacation this coming week, and after that, as soon as I get back, we'll start with the next set of challenges. And the same there, just do it at your own pace, and you can always re-record challenges if you feel like, if I gave you feedback and you want to apply that feedback, then you can always re-record as much as you like. The idea is to kind of get you guys sort of tracking and such. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Good chatting with you guys. Good hanging out. Okay, bye.